The same area, so we're concerned. And we'll have to see over the next 24, 48 hours. At the moment, it's a bit too soon, but I think there was that action that you mentioned. It's a sort of a chop, and he felt something there. So we'll just have to see how the extent of it and keep our fingers crossed at the moment. Yeah, he's disappointed, of course he is. Yeah, but again, at the moment we're in a stage where we're just hoping that it isn't as bad, and we keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, it was a dark cloud on what would have otherwise been a silver lining for Chelsea last night, wasn't it? You know him so well. You must be gutted this morning for him, are you?
Yeah, I think the last time that we was on here, we were speaking about how disappointed we were that he was gonna miss out on the World Cup. So hugely disappointing to see him go off, and I think you could see with the distress on his face that. I think we all agree that being involved in football and being a footballer, the worst part of the game is injuries. And I have to say that if you want to put anything at the top of that list, it's probably a reoccurrence of an injury that you've been recovering from. So hugely disappointing, not just for us Chelsea fans and Reece himself, but also for England, because I think we've said it many a time that Reece is one of the top fullbacks in the world, and Chelsea most certainly perform better when he's on the pitch.
Yeah, he certainly made a difference, didn't he? The first half compared to the second half last night when he'd gone off, it was clear to see. What is the hardest thing here? Is it mentally now for him, or the physical rehab? Which is more difficult?
Well, I think you have to look at the mental side of it, because, as I said, the worst thing is a reoccurrence or a setback in the same area that was previously injured. I think the mental side of it is one that maybe you have to look at instantly, because as I said, you could see the distress on his face when he was leaving the football pitch last night. You then have to think about how bad is the reoccurrence of the injury. I think, as the manager quite rightly said there, it's too early to tell, but I think you then have a balance on, you want to hope for good news that it maybe isn't as serious as when he first injured it. And then I think you could then start looking at the mental aspect again when you know how serious or the severity of what the injury is. But I think you have to make sure that you're taking care of both sides of that. Yeah,
and I guess there's two sides as well to the support he needs. What will his mood be like now? Will he report the comment this morning? How does this all work?
Well, I think first and foremost, for you to get the results or the feedback you need regarding an injury, it will be to try and get the swelling down. I imagine, because of the type of injury it was regarding in the, I imagine there'll be some swelling or some pain, and over the next couple of days is when you try and get that down so that you can actually have the scan that shows you the extent of the injury. So yeah, he would have been in at Cobham instantly this morning and trying to go through sort of like what the tests are like the day after the injury, because sometimes you may get little twinges or little kind of scares regarding certain injuries that may not be as bad as what is first expected. So yeah, you're going into Cobham, and obviously it's one of those where you'll have plenty of staff and plenty of players, which they have in abundance at the club, that would be trying to rally round people like that. I mean, he's not the first person to be injured this season for Chelsea. He's got plenty of other teammates that have gone through similar experiences this year, and it'll be something that he's had in his pretty young career so far already. As I said, it's the worst thing for footballers, going down with injuries, and as I said, the top of that list is when you get a reoccurrence. So fingers crossed it isn't as bad as what it first looked like last night.
Yeah. And your time at the academy there, and later with Frank. You got to the whole process. You get to know the family. His dad Nigel, his siblings, his mum will also play a key part in this.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we spoke about this before with the World Cup. Is that he'll have friends and family that have most certainly would have been lending their support last night. You'd have had the staff, the manager and his staff, and players all wrapped around in it, and that's. It's a really important part of the game, and as I said, a lot of the stuff that people don't see when players are not on the pitch is almost the traumatic side of stuff that you can go through off the pitch, whether it be regarding injuries or whether it be things that happen even further away from the the field of play. So he'll have had plenty of support. As I said, it's not the first injury he's ever had, but at the same time, when it is a reoccurrence and in your first game back, it can add to the poor feelings that he'll be experiencing this morning.
Yeah. You said it's not the first injury that Chelsea have had either. Very unscientific, but in my mind, Chelsea seem to have had worse luck than quite a few other clubs at the moment. I'm thinking, Kante, Chilwell, Fofana, some big players who've picked up these injuries. Is that just the workload that these Chelsea players have been under? Or if you were Graham Potter, will you be thinking, actually, I need to maybe investigate this?
I think if you've got a good medical setup, which Chelsea have, and they've always had, I know there's been some changing of the guard of late with the new owners. I think you're always investigating, no matter how good your injury record is or how bad it is. I think you're constantly investigating, because I think that's what the best medical departments do, and I'm sure Chelsea are doing that today. But sometimes you can just go through spells where it's a bit of a coincidence that you're getting certain injuries. Sometimes other clubs may get the same amount of injuries, but they're not as serious. And it does look at the minute that Chelsea have just fallen on the side of bad luck. I mean, we all know kind of what's gone on with N'Golo Kante the last few years. I mean, he had an impeccable injury record till we went in the club, to be fair.
It's all your fault, Jody.
Yeah. No, but you do have sometimes these players that are extremely lucky to go through really long periods of not picking up any injuries, and all of a sudden it comes at a certain time. Some players get it early in their career, and then they manage to get through a bit of a less sticky period towards the end, and vice versa. So at the moment, it looks like Chelsea have fallen on the side of bad luck regarding injuries, but I'm sure that there's still some investigating going on.
Yeah. Brozier, another one.
Yeah,
out for a while, and that
extremely bad luck. I mean, like I said, you can pick up the same amount of injuries, but when they're serious long-term ones, that's when you may need to maybe look at reinvesting and trying to make sure that you can get a short-term return on your good luck.
Yeah. I mean, you've alluded to the last time we spoke, and that was Gareth Southgate's decision not to take him. And I guess there'd have been a few Chelsea fans who looked at James Maddison and he didn't get any minutes. He's come back, still can't play for Leicester at the moment because he's injured, and thinking, well, you took him and you didn't take Reece James. But actually, last night, did that show that perhaps, sadly for Reece, that Gareth Southgate was right not to take him?
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with the decision instantly. As I said, I said here last time that I told Reece when he first picked up his injury that you've got another 14, 15 years to worry about. Make sure you don't rush it all for this one competition. Yes, it is the pinnacle of a lot of people's international careers, being able to play at a World Cup, and Reece most certainly would have played. But especially when it's to do with knees, I think you need to err on the side of caution. And as a Chelsea fan, I was pleased to see him not be with the England squad and trying to maybe force himself and rush himself back to fitness. And it looks like that they've taken the longer view, Chelsea, as far as getting him back, because there's no way they would have started him in the game last night if he wasn't ready to start the game. But it looks like he maybe come off, as I said, the wrong side of luck this time. But as I said, I do think we need to wait and see what the results are saying. Obviously, initially, it's not looking good because of the distress he was in when he left the pitch.
Yeah, and I'm not alluding to Reece James here that he would do this or that Graham Potter would do this. So let's get that clear before we go into this question. But as a coach, it must be really difficult. You've got a player who you know is hugely significant and you need results. You've got a player who will automatically most probably tell you that he's fit enough to play, wants to play, yet maybe there's a question mark from the medical team. How difficult is it getting that balance right and not feeling the pressure to get the result, looking after a player in the long term when you know you need short-term results?
Well, I think that's all to do with, first and foremost, the discussions that the medical department and Graham are having themselves regarding the player, because you always want to be working in conjunction and on the same page. Sometimes you have to take into account the character of the player, because as much as we maybe don't like to hear it, there are some players that would maybe not look to miss games, but maybe need a helping hand to be pushed into the starting lineup.
Very diplomatically put.
Yeah, a helping hand to be pushed into the starting lineup because they maybe err on the side of caution quite a bit themselves. I think Reece falls into the category of would maybe try and put himself on the pitch a little bit earlier than some medical departments would like him to because he wants to play so much. But I think with the fact that he missed the World Cup and he's had a period of no games for Chelsea, which has enabled him to train, get good training minutes in. I mean, we saw that he was in full-blown training over 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So for him to be starting the game last night didn't look to be too much of a surprise, to be honest. And like I said, I think when you've got a player of Reece's ability and calibre, that he is such an important part of the side, you do want to put him in as quickly as possible, but with huge emphasis on as possible, because there's no way that Graham would want to rush him back to then put him at risk to losing him for longer periods. So I'm sure everything was done on the right side regarding that. And like I said, you have to take into account sometimes the players, but Reece is getting to an age now where he knows his body a lot better than he did maybe when he was 16, 17 years of age. So wouldn't want to do anything silly himself.
Yeah.